The call for diplomacy. The grand hall of the Galactic Council shimmered with light, its crystal walls reflecting the bright, burning rays of 3 different suns. The sheer magnitude of the space was overwhelming, and yet it still felt cold, an environment built for power rather than compassion. Ambassador James Stone, the human representative from Earth, adjusted his simple black tie, a gesture that helped calm his nerves as he prepared to enter the most important diplomatic event of his life. The room, filled with alien species from across the galaxy, was a blur of elaborate robes and ceremonial armor. Stone stood out, his classic Earth suit representing humanity's practical nature amidst the spectacle of the galaxy's most influential species. Stone had trained for this moment for years. He'd faced countless negotiations, each more challenging than the last, but none like this. The tensions surrounding this peace summit were palpable. This was not just another diplomatic meeting. It marked the 10th anniversary of Earth's membership in the Galactic Council. It was supposed to be a celebration of unity, of growth, of the accomplishments that Earth had made since joining the Council. But something felt wrong. Whispers of unrest, rumors of the Stellar Empire's unusual fleet movements, filled the air. The galaxy's largest power, the Stellar Empire, controlled over 300 star systems and was rumored to be preparing for something catastrophic. No one dared to speak openly about the looming threat, but it hung in the air like a cloud, suffocating any chance of optimism. As the speaker's voice echoed through the hall, announcing the arrival of the human delegation, Stone's mind focused entirely on the task at hand. His team followed him in perfect formation, their disciplined movements a testament to the hours of preparation they had gone through to ensure they would present Earth in the best light possible. Every eye in the galaxy would be watching them today. Their performance here could determine Earth's future in the galactic order. The hall was quiet as they approached the center of the room, the hum of distant conversations fading into an eerie stillness. The council members from various species watched intently, their eyes filled with curiosity and suspicion. All eyes turned to the towering figure of Emperor Vil, seated at the head of the council. The Emperor's 4 glowing purple eyes blinked in a pattern that was unsettling, almost menacing. The air seemed to thicken with tension as his gaze fell upon Stone and his team. The Emperor, with his regal presence, exuded an aura of authority and disdain. The council session was officially underway. Stone's palms were slightly clammy, but his face remained impassive. He had been trained for this moment by the best minds on Earth. He could feel the weight of history pressing down on him, the eyes of countless species looking to him to represent humanity. He knew the importance of what was about to transpire. It was not just about trade agreements or military alliances. It was about the survival of Earth and its place in a galaxy dominated by ancient and powerful species. The Emperor stood up abruptly, his voice cutting through the room like a blade. His words echoed off the walls, each syllable laced with venom and intent. Before the human delegation presents their proposals, Vil began. The Stellar Empire has an important declaration to make. Stone's stomach tightened. This wasn't part of the plan. Let it be known, the Emperor continued, his 4 eyes narrowing with fury, that the Stellar Empire hereby withdraws from all existing peace treaties, trade agreements, and military non-intervention pacts. We no longer recognize the authority of the Galactic Council to regulate our affairs. A wave of shock rippled through the council. Gasps and murmurs filled the air. Smaller species representatives exchanged looks of fear and confusion, while others began to speak in hushed tones. The room was suddenly filled with a cacophony of worried voices. Stone stood motionless, his mind racing through the implications of the Emperor's words. The peaceful order that had been painstakingly built over centuries was crumbling before his very eyes. Emperor Vil's gaze shifted, locking directly onto Stone. His voice became even more cutting as he sneered at the human ambassador. You dare to stand before me, human? Do you believe you have earned a place among the stars? Your species barely learned to leave your planet a century ago. You are unworthy of standing among us. The venom in his words was undeniable. The Emperor's tone dripped with contempt, as if humanity's very presence in the galaxy was an affront to his empire's greatness. Stone felt a rush of anger bubble up inside him, but he suppressed it, allowing only a calm, measured response to escape his lips. He did not flinch. "Your Majesty," Stone said, his voice clear and steady, "I thank you for expressing your position so thoroughly. The record will show that at exactly 1427 Galactic Standard Time, the Stellar Empire chose to violate 37 separate peace treaties, 6 trade agreements, and 4 military non-intervention pacts." The room went silent as the words sank in. Stone's statement hung in the air like a weight, and for a brief moment, the Emperor's confident facade faltered. But only for a moment. The council members began frantically checking their data pads, verifying Stone's claim. Stone's calculated response had struck a chord with the members of the Galactic Council, many of whom had long grown weary of the Empire's heavy-handed tactics. His calmness, his ability to remain composed in the face of such a monumental provocation, made a powerful impression. But Emperor Vil was not one to be bested so easily. His purple skin darkened with rage, his 4 eyes glaring with murderous intensity. "Do you have nothing to say in defense of your species?" he snarled, challenging Stone. The room fell silent again, all eyes now on the human diplomat. Stone, feeling the weight of the galaxy's gaze upon him, remained unfazed. He raised his hand slightly, signaling to his team to remain composed. This was not the time for rash decisions. Stone was a master of diplomacy, and he knew that patience was often the most powerful weapon in a negotiation. "No," Stone replied calmly, "I have nothing to add at this time. But rest assured, Your Majesty, your words will not go unchallenged." Stone turned toward the council speaker, who seemed more than eager to find an excuse to end the session. "Honored Speaker," Stone said, his voice smooth and deliberate, "given this unexpected development, I request a 24-hour recess so that all delegations may contact their governments for new instructions." The speaker, clearly relieved, quickly granted the request. "Granted," they declared, their voice shaking slightly. As Stone and his team exited the chamber, the Emperor's glare burned into his back. But Stone was already thinking several steps ahead. The Empire had just made its first mistake, and he intended to make sure it wouldn't be their last. Back in the Earth delegation's private chamber, Stone's aide, Robert Gray, watched him carefully. The weight of the day's events hung heavy in the air. "Sir, what do we do now?" Stone gazed out the window at the stars, his mind whirring with possibilities. The Emperor had just made the mistake of underestimating humanity. "Now," Stone said quietly, "we show them why you should never mistake humanity's patience for weakness." The human response. The quiet hum of the Earth diplomatic vessel was the only sound as Ambassador James Stone paced back and forth in the briefing room, the weight of the galaxy's future pressing down on him. His mind raced with the implications of the events that had unfolded in the Galactic Council chamber. The Stellar Empire's unexpected move was a declaration of war, not in the traditional sense of battles and gunfire, but in a far more insidious way. Emperor Vil had made a power play, one designed to weaken the Council and assert the Empire's dominance over the galaxy. He thought humanity was too new, too inexperienced, to even understand the true cost of his declaration. Stone, however, had seen enough in his career to know the greatest strength wasn't in military might or starships. It was in knowledge, in the ability to see beyond the surface and understand the consequences of every move made on the galactic stage. And in that moment, Stone had already started to see the patterns, the hidden openings that the Empire had failed to consider. Robert Gray, his trusted aide, was seated at a nearby console, his eyes flicking over the data streams and holographic displays that filled the room. His fingers moved rapidly, inputting new data points and cross-referencing them with previous reports. It had been hours since the emergency recess was granted, but Stone hadn't stopped thinking for a second. Every word, every action by Emperor Vil was a key, unlocking a door that Stone was determined to walk through. "Sir," Robert said, looking up from his screen, his voice laced with concern. "I've gathered everything we have so far. The Empire's actions in the past few months. It's worse than we thought." Stone's sharp eyes narrowed as he approached the console. The holographic display flickered and pulsed with information, mapping out the movements of the Empire's ships and the strange pattern of their resource consumption. "What are we looking at?" Robert tapped the screen, zooming in on a cluster of red lines that indicated the locations of several independent mining worlds in the Orion Arm. These worlds, they've been receiving unusual visits from the Stellar Empire's fleet. Not military ships, trade ships. But the odd thing is, they'd been disappearing from the official records. Their movements are off the books. Stone's jaw tightened. Are they being targeted? "Not directly," Robert said, "but the pattern's clear. They'd been quietly pulling their civilian ships out of trade routes. The Empire is isolating them, cutting off access to resources. If they continue this, they'll have full control over the galaxy's precious resources, and the independent worlds will have nowhere to turn." Stone rubbed his temples, the weight of the realization sinking in. So, the Empire's preparing for a silent war, one where they don't need a fleet to win. They just cut off their enemy's supply lines and watch them crumble. Robert nodded. "Exactly. They'll starve them out, one by one, without firing a single shot." The room fell silent as both men processed the dire situation. Stone had been prepared for many scenarios, but this one felt different. The Empire's usual tactics were brazen and brutal, but this was calculated, insidious. They were preparing to strike without the galaxy even realizing it until it was too late. Stone turned sharply to face the room's panoramic windows, staring out at the stars that had once seemed so vast and full of promise. Now they felt like a battleground, a place where every move could change the course of history. He thought about Earth's own position in the galaxy. As the newest member of the Galactic Council, humanity had gained much in the past decade, but it was still seen as weak in the eyes of many. The Empire, with its centuries of dominance, thought humanity would bow to their will. They had underestimated Earth's greatest strength. It wasn't the might of their fleets or the vastness of their resources. It was their ingenuity, their resilience, their ability to turn the tide of any conflict with creativity, and a willingness to sacrifice for the greater good. Humans had faced extinction before on their homeworld, and each time they had found a way to survive. "Prepare the data," Stone said, his voice low but filled with determination. "We're going to show the galaxy how humans fight back, but not with warships, not with guns or missiles. We'll fight with something far stronger." Robert looked up from his console, understanding instantly. "You're going to go after their trade routes, aren't you?" Stone smiled, a glint of quiet confidence in his eyes. "Exactly. The Empire thinks they can control the galaxy with their stranglehold on resources. They believe they can break the will of the independent species by starving them out. But they don't realize that trade is not just about resources. It's about relationships. It's about cooperation. And humanity has spent centuries building trade networks that span the stars." With a quick gesture, Stone brought up a new display on the console, mapping out trade routes between independent planets. His fingers hovered over the holographic interface, selecting data points that would make the Empire's stranglehold on the galaxy irrelevant. "We'll offer the independent species an alternative. We won't fight the Empire's military. No, we'll hit them where it hurts. We'll disrupt their entire economic system, break their chokehold on resources." Robert's eyes widened. "You're proposing a galactic economic alliance?" "Yes," Stone replied, his mind already seeing the possibilities. "An alliance built on shared resources, new trade routes, and the strength of collective cooperation. We'll buy up resources before the Empire can get their hands on them. We'll create new pathways for trade that bypass their control. And when the Empire realizes their power is meaningless, they'll have no choice but to bend to the will of the independent worlds." The idea was audacious, but it was the only way. Stone knew the galaxy's independent species would be hesitant at first. After all, They had been living under the shadow of the Empire for centuries. But humanity had one advantage they didn't: patience. Humans had learned long ago how to wait for the right moment, to plan their moves carefully and strike when their opponents were most vulnerable. And the Empire had just shown them exactly where they were weak. The emergency meeting chamber was already being prepared for the urgent gathering of representatives from the independent species. Stone's heart raced as he made final preparations for the presentation that would change everything. It wasn't going to be easy, and it wasn't going to be fast. But it was the only option they had. The Empire had underestimated humanity's resolve. The galaxy was about to learn just how dangerous a human could be when backed into a corner. Stone stood tall, his eyes burning with determination. "It's time to show them that humanity's patience is not weakness," he muttered to himself. "It's the calm before the storm." Unveiling the plan. The Earth diplomatic vessel drifted through the stars, a silent sentinel in the vast expanse of space, its sleek hull reflecting the light of distant suns. Inside the vessel, the atmosphere was thick with anticipation. Ambassador James Stone stood before a large interactive holographic display, his fingers tracing the glowing lines of data that mapped out the intricate web of trade routes and military movements of the stellar empire. His mind was working at full capacity, processing the staggering amount of information they had gathered in the last 24 hours. The stakes had never been higher, and Stone knew that every decision he made from here on out would determine the future of Earth and the independent species across the galaxy. "How are the preparations coming along?" Stone asked, turning to Robert Gray, his trusted aide. Robert had been tirelessly working with the Earth economic and military advisors, compiling data on the Empire's economic strategy. There were no longer any doubts about the Empire's intentions. They weren't just isolating independent worlds. They were slowly strangling them, cutting off their access to vital resources, and tightening their grip on the galaxy's economy. The Empire's ability to control trade was their true power, and Stone had come to realize that the only way to defeat them was to disrupt that power at its core. "Everything's coming together, sir," Robert replied, his voice steady but tinged with exhaustion. "We've mapped out alternative trade routes that bypass Empire-controlled space. We've secured agreements with several independent worlds who are willing to join our economic alliance. And we've started stockpiling essential resources to give us leverage in case the Empire tries to retaliate." Stone nodded, his eyes focused on the screen in front of him, where a 3D map of the galaxy spun slowly, the routes glowing in different colors to indicate levels of importance. "Good. The Empire thinks it can hold the galaxy hostage through its control of resources, but we'll show them that we don't need to rely on their trade routes. We'll create our own." He paused, his mind racing through the implications of what they were about to do. Disrupting the Empire's economy wasn't just a matter of finding new trade routes. It was about creating a network of influence strong enough to challenge the Empire's established order. They needed the support of every independent world, from the smallest mining colony to the most powerful trading hubs. It wasn't just about resources, it was about trust, cooperation, and a collective willingness to stand against a common enemy. "Once we have this network in place," Stone continued, "we'll need to broadcast our success to the entire galaxy. The Empire thrives on fear and control, but if we can prove that their dominance is nothing more than a facade, the independent species will follow our lead. They'll have no choice but to join us." Robert looked skeptical. "And if the Empire catches on to what we're doing before we can secure enough allies, what then?" Stone's lips curled into a determined smile. "That's why we're moving quickly. We're not giving them time to retaliate. Once we've established our economic alliance, we'll move to the next phase of the plan, exposing the Empire's weaknesses to the galaxy. It's all about information, Robert. The Empire believes it's invincible because it controls the flow of knowledge. We're going to turn that on its head." The two men fell silent as the weight of Stone's words sank in. The next few days would be critical. If they failed, the Empire would tighten its grip on the galaxy, and the independent species would be left to wither under its control. But if they succeeded, it would be a victory not just for Earth, but for every world that had ever felt the heavy hand of the Empire's oppression. As Stone and Robert worked tirelessly, the Earth delegation's efforts did not go unnoticed. The news of the Empire's sudden withdrawal from the Galactic Council had spread like wildfire, and the political leaders of countless worlds were watching closely to see how Earth would respond. Some were skeptical of humanity's ability to take on such a formidable opponent. Others, however, were eager to see the Empire's stranglehold broken. Many of the smaller species, who had long suffered under the Empire's control, began to secretly reach out to Earth's diplomats, offering support in exchange for the promise of a new order, one where they would no longer be at the mercy of the Empire's whims. The first breakthrough came when Stone received an encrypted message from the ambassador of the Proxima trading worlds. The message was brief, but filled with urgency. "We are ready to discuss terms. Contact us immediately." Stone's heart raced. Proxima was one of the largest trading hubs in the galaxy, and if they were willing to join the alliance, it would give them the momentum they needed to sway other worlds. Stone wasted no time in contacting the ambassador, arranging a meeting aboard the Earth diplomatic vessel. The negotiations that followed would be pivotal, and Stone knew that he had to tread carefully. The Proxima ambassador, a tall, silver-skinned alien named Eliar, was known for being pragmatic, but also fiercely independent. Convincing him to break ties with the Empire would require more than just promises. It would require concrete actions and undeniable proof that the Empire's grip could be broken. When the day of the meeting arrived, Stone and Robert were seated in the conference room, the atmosphere charged with anticipation. The holographic display flickered as Eliar's image appeared, his silver skin shimmering under the light. His expression was unreadable, but there was a sharpness in his eyes that betrayed his experience in the political theater of the galaxy. "Ambassador Stone," Eliar began, his voice smooth and calculated, "I've been following your actions closely. The Empire's sudden withdrawal from the Council is troubling, to say the least. But you must know that the Proxima worlds are not easily swayed. We've been allies of the Empire for centuries, and any shift in allegiance carries risks." Stone met Eliar's gaze, his voice calm but unwavering. "I understand the weight of your decision, Ambassador, but the risks of remaining aligned with the Empire are far greater. The Empire is preparing to isolate and conquer every independent world, one by one. We've already begun to disrupt their control over trade routes, but we need your support to do more, to send a message to the galaxy that the Empire is not invincible, that unity can break their power." There was a long pause as Eliar considered Stone's words. The tension in the room was palpable, each second stretching into what felt like eternity. Finally, Eliar spoke, his tone softened but resolute. "You have proven your resolve, Ambassador. The Proxima trading worlds are ready to stand with you, but we will not do so lightly. We will need guarantees, resources, and the assurance that the Empire's retaliation will not crush us." Stone nodded, his expression firm. "We can offer you the resources of the Earth Federation, along with access to new trade routes and alliances with other independent species. Together, we can create an economic network that will give the Empire no choice but to reconsider its position. And if the Empire does retaliate, they will find that we are not as easy to defeat as they believe." Eliar paused for a moment, then nodded slowly. "Then it is agreed. We will stand with you, Ambassador. But know this, if we are to succeed, we must act swiftly and decisively. The Empire will not hesitate to strike back once they see their power slipping away." Stone's heart swelled with a quiet sense of triumph. It was only the beginning, but it was a crucial first step. The pieces were falling into place, and the foundation of the alliance was solidifying. Earth's greatest weapon wasn't in its military strength. It was in its ability to unite, to inspire others to act. The galactic power structure was shifting, and Stone would be at the heart of that change. With the Proxima worlds now officially part of the alliance, Stone knew the next phase of their plan would be even more difficult. The Empire would surely notice the growing resistance, and they would not allow it to continue without a fight. But Stone was ready. He had always known that the path to victory was never easy. And now, with the support of the independent worlds, they had a chance to rewrite the galaxy's future. The Empire's arrogance had led them to underestimate humanity, and soon they would realize the full cost of their mistake.